Many people either use words incorrectly or do not know how to use them at all. If you're like most people, these words present a problem except at the beginning of a sentence. This slide shows the 3 ways subject pronouns are used. This is the most common and easiest. Think of a predicate noun or pronoun as a mathematical equation which means the same thing as the subject. The key to identifying an appositive is seeing whether or not it means the same as the word or words immediately before it. This can be a little tricky, but think of a function as how a word is used in the sentence. You function as a student, teacher, parent, and friend, but you are still the same person. In the example, the appositive can function as the subject of a sentence. With the exception of singular and plural you and it, which do not change, the object pronouns include me, him, her, us, and them. Indefinite pronouns include whom and whomever. Look at the 4 uses of object pronouns listed below. The first and most common use of an object pronoun is as direct object. Notice the word object is named in its function and how to identify it from the examples given. Similarly, an indirect object uses object in its function. Prepositions connect the noun or pronoun following them in the prepositional phrase logically to the rest of the sentence. Without up, the sentence would read, "The cat ran a tree," and would make no sense. In the second example, them would not make sense without for. Here is a list of common prepositions. The 2 previous slides should help you understand the 3rd use of object pronouns. The trick in the second example is to replace you and me with the plural pronoun us, not we, so the appropriate singular pronoun is me and not I. If you have followed along thus far, the use of indefinite pronouns should not be too difficult. Be certain to cross out the rest of the sentence, focusing only on the clause beginning with the indefinite pronoun. Next, find the verb in that clause and ask yourself who or what is doing the action. If it is a subject, use who or whoever. An object, use whom or whomever. Let's look at another example. Again, focus on the clause beginning with the indefinite pronoun. Find the verb and ask yourself who likes. In this sentence, the answer is he. Look at the explanation in red below the sample sentence. Finally, use an object pronoun as the subject or predicate pronoun of an infinitive. Look at the definition of an infinitive and the hint below it. People sometimes confuse adjectives with adverbs. Adjectives describe persons, places, and things, and answer the questions which, what kind, how many. Adverbs describe verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs, such as walking slowly, answering how, or for exercise telling why. the baby was too tired to eat, or the professor wrote very rapidly, telling to what extent. Now let's examine some frequently confused words. To remember the difference between aid and aid, look at the definitions. AID means help, while AIDE is a person. The word person is longer than help, and AIDE is longer than AID. In the first example, bad describes she, a pronoun, so it's an adjective. In the second example, badly describes felt, a verb, and tells how. Note the differences between the use of well and good. Look at the hint at the bottom of the slide. Regular comparisons of adjectives add ER in the comparative form and EST in the superlative form. There is a small paw print, a smaller print, and the smallest. Similarly, a large print, a larger print, and the largest print of an animal is shown. Please note that only one-syllable words add these endings. Two-syllable words may use the comparative and superlative endings ER and EST respectively. They may also use the comparative more or the superlative most with the positive form. Adjectives with more than two syllables always use more or most for the comparative and superlative forms, as you can see in the example with beautiful. Use the same endings to form comparative or superlative forms of one-syllable adverbs. As you do with adjectives of more than two syllables, use more or most with adverbs of more than two syllables. Irregular comparisons are especially difficult for English language learners. Many and much do not have a comparative or superlative form. Look at the comparative and superlative forms for many, good and bad in the chart below, paying a particular attention to the sample sentences. Other irregular forms include less and least, latter and last, former and first, and between and among. Look at the sentences to see how each word is used. Native speakers of languages other than English often use double comparisons. In English, use either ER or more, not both. Just as you do in the comparative forms, use the superlative EST or most, not both. Include the word other when comparing one thing with a group of which it is a part. Note the correct use in the example given. The same rule applies to the use of else in a comparison of one thing with a group of which it is a part. The last example is correct. One way to remember the difference in these words is through structural analysis. The prefix AD means to. It is changed to AC and except to make the pronunciation easier. The prefix EX means out. To keep these straight, look at the end of the word. IZE and ISE denote verbs. Ice is a thing and a noun, as advice is. Affect and effect often give people trouble. Look at the first example. Affect has one E just as the word verb does. An effect, as in the third sentence, is a result of an action or event. Aggravate is used colloquially, not in formal writing or speech, to mean irritate. Look at the difference between the words. Look at the hint for when all ready are written as two words. There is no such word as ALRIGHT. The difference between altogether as two words or one is similar to already. If you can insert of them between all and together, write two words. As in accept and except, allude and elude use structural analysis. AD, here changed to AL, means to, so someone refers to something. EX means out, so elude is to get out of or escape notice. Remember the difference between these words by associating with allude and illustrate. There is no such word as ALOT. Look at the highlighted areas that tell you how to use among and between. The words amount and number are often misused. The examples given show how to use them correctly. To determine whether any more is written as one word or two, substitute more of. So the third example might read, "Is there any more of the bread left?" The first two sentences would not use more of sensibly. Never use being as or being that when you want because or since. Adding an E to breath makes it a verb. You bring an item from a place and take it to another. Note both take and to begin with T. Look at the way hardly and scarcely are used correctly in English. Do you see how the words censor and censure are used in context? Some people have difficulty with choose and chose. Just remember that choose is present tense and chose is past. Associate CITE with a citation of an authority in a research paper. Adding an E to cloth makes it a verb. There's one E in verb, there's one E in clothe. Look at the mnemonic device to differentiate compliment meaning to complete and compliment meaning to praise. Since the word consensus means a collective opinion, do not use consensus of opinion. Look at the difference between how continual or continually and continuous and continuously are used. Contractions are fine in informal speech, but in a formal paper they're not used. The singular for criteria is criterion, which is one standard. Similarly, data is plural from the Latin, and datum is one number or statistic. The way to remember something is different from another is look at the F's in different and from. Disinterested people are not biased. Uninterested people are bored. Here again you can use structural analysis to use illicit and illicit. E means out from, and IL is a variation of IN meaning not. Also, illicit and illegal, the definition, begin the same way. People become enthusiastic about something. Also, avoid, etc. It really means nothing. This error occurs frequently in students' writing. Every day as one word is common. As two words, it means each day. To keep everyone straight, use every one of several or a group when you want two words. The use of fewer and less also presents special problems for students. Use fewer if you can count things, and less if you cannot. Using figure when you want think is slang. Using of as a verb is substandard English. This is another very common pitfall in students' writing. Indefinite pronouns, everyone, everybody, no one, nobody, someone, somebody, anyone, and anybody are singular and take his or her, as in the example. Notice the correct use of the plural there with the plural antecedent all. A person is hopeful, an adjective describing how he feels. The people wait hopefully, an adverb telling how they wait. A formal research paper avoids the use of first-person references. Use third person instead. Kind of and sort of are informal expressions, while kind of a and sort of a are substandard English. Look at the difference between liable, a legal term, and likely, meaning apt to happen. Words which entered English from Latin retain their original plurals and singulars, such as media and medium. Don't confuse the moral of a story with the morale of workers. Okay is informal language. Don't use it in a formal paper. To make your writing concise and to the point, avoid using several words when one will do. Look at the difference between how percent and percentage is used correctly. Once again, use structural analysis to use these words correctly. The prefix pre means before. Use pretty only to mean attractive. A quotation is a group of words. Quote is something you do. In academic writing, avoid constructions such as "the reason is because" or "the reason is why." By using both reason and because or reason and why, the construction is redundant. Instead, use either "the reason is that" or "because" or "why" alone. Many students use regards with an S for sentiment when they mean regard to. Seen cannot be used alone as a verb. Look at the examples to see how sometime, sometimes, and sometime as two words are used. Stationery has two different spellings and two different meanings. I keep them straight by associating the A and E with paper. Don't use such to mean very or extremely in formal writing. People often omit the final D on the verbs supposed and used when followed by to. Use the standard sure to and try to forms. Students often confuse these words. Than has an A as in comparison, and then has an E as in time and when. Look at the mnemonic clues to help you tell the difference among the three theirs. To use the three twos correctly, try substituting also, or more than enough, or the number for the two you want. If none of these make sense, use TO. Do not use unique with any modifiers. Wait on is a substandard substitute for wait for. Wait on is appropriate only when people give service to others. Where it's at is a slang expression. To keep from confusing these homonyms, substitute the words who is. If you cannot sensibly do that in a sentence, use WHOSE. Use the same technique with your as suggested in the previous slide with whose. Look at these expressions to compare informal with formal levels of language. In formal writing, kids are baby goats, not children. Mnemonic devices also help with the verbs lie and lay. Lie with an I means rest or recline. Lay with an A means put or place. In the simple past tense, lie meaning to rest or recline is lay, while lay to put or place uses a D to indicate it has been done. Once again, associate the past participle of lain, which ends in N, with nap for rest or recline, meaning the past of lie. Now try the exercises in the appropriate learning module to see how much you have learned.